Kion was born to rule, the youngest son of Simba and Nala, leader of the Lion Guard and wielder of the roar of the elders. But what made him legendary wasn't his power, it was what he gave up. His journey? It didn't end in battle. It started with pain and a choice that changed everything. For years, he protected the Pride Lands. He faced enemies, he led his team, and he fought with courage. But one day, everything changed. During a fierce showdown with the venomous cobra, Kion was bitten. The poison didn't just hurt his body, it rattled his spirit. He became irritable, short-tempered, and unsure of himself. The roar, once so natural, now felt wild and unpredictable. He wasn't just injured, he was lost. He knew something had to change, so he made a decision that no lion had ever made before. He stepped away from the Lion Guard, away from Pride Rock, away from everything he'd been raised to protect. His destination? A place far beyond the Pride Lands, whispered about in legend, the Tree of Life. But he didn't go alone. His most trusted friends, Bunga, Fuli, Beshti, Ono, and Anga, followed him on the long journey. Together, they crossed deserts, mountains, and rivers. But the toughest terrain wasn't physical. It was all emotional. As Kion wrestled with his inner demons, his friends stayed close. They didn't try to fix him. They just walked beside him. And through their loyalty, he started to realize something. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. Each trial along the way chipped away at his pride and his fear, and slowly he began to understand the roar wasn't who he was. It was just part of his path, but it wasn't his entire purpose. And at the Tree of Life, that truth would come into full view. When Kion arrived, the Tree of Life was under the care of Queen Jana and her granddaughter Rani. Rani was brave, proud, and fiercely protective of her home. She didn't trust outsiders, especially not one carrying the roar. At first, she clashed with Kion. He was used to leading. She was used to questioning. But beneath their differences, they both carried heavy burdens. And slowly, through shared challenges, respect bloomed. And where there was respect, connection followed. When Queen Jana passed on, Rani became queen, and to everybody's surprise, maybe even her own, she asked Kion to stay, to lead by her side. But he was torn. The Pride Lands were his birthright, his family, his history. But the Tree of Life was calling him towards something else, something new. It wasn't just about healing his body anymore. It was about stepping into a future that he never imagined. Before Kion could say yes, the Tree of Life was attacked. Old enemies, Makucha, Ora, Chulun, had united to strike. They weren't just after land, they were after peace itself. And so, Kion stood once more on the front lines, but this time, it was different. He wasn't fighting for pride or legacy. No, he was fighting to protect a sanctuary, to protect a vision, a home that he had only just begun to believe in. The roar returned to him in full force, but it wasn't rage that fueled it. It was clarity. It was compassion. With a mighty cry, he unleashed the roar one last time, not to conquer, but to protect. His enemies were cast far into the mountains, not destroyed, just moved away, peacefully. And that's when it became clear that he had mastered the roar, but not with power, with respect. After the battle, he returned to the Pride Lands just for a short visit, and he found something surprising waiting for him. His sister, Vatani, had formed her own Lion Guard. They were strong, loyal, and they were ready, just like Kion's team had once been. But instead of challenging her or claiming back the roar, Kion did something unexpected. He bowed his head, and he let it go. He passed the roar to Vatani, not in a form of surrender, but from a place of trust. He knew now that leadership isn't about holding power. It's about knowing when to pass it on. It was in that moment, not during battle or a heat of a moment, that Kion truly became a leader. As he stood on Pride Rock, looking over the lands that he had once sworn to protect, memories came rushing back. The first time he called on the roar, the day that he had formed the guard, the way Bunga always dove in head first, Fuli's quiet confidence, Ono's watchful eyes, Beshti's steady strength, Anga's sharp instincts. At the end of the day, they weren't just warriors, they were his family. But now, as much as it hurt, it was time. Letting go of the roar meant letting go of that chapter. And though it hurt, he understood something deeper now. A true leader knows when to step forward, but a wise one knows when to step back. He turned to them with a smile that held years of memories. "We did what we came to do," he said, "and now it's Vitani's turn." They didn't cry, not right then anyway, but the silence between them said everything. It was a farewell, not to each other, but to the people that they used to be. When Kion returned to the Tree of Life, he wasn't just a guest anymore. He was king. Beside Ronnie, he learned to rule not by dominance, but by listening. The animals of the Tree of Life didn't follow because he had a roar. They followed because he had a heart. There were no armies, no battles to win, just lives to protect, stories to hear, a home to nurture. He began to lead with gentleness, settling disputes, welcoming the lost, and offering peace in a world that had known far too much fear. He didn't roar anymore. He didn't need to. His presence, that was enough. Back at Pride Rock, Kiara had become queen with Kovu by her side. The lands were thriving under their rule, and even though Kion and Kovu came from very different paths, their journeys kept crossing. When Kion visited, he and Kovu would sit under the stars, swapping stories of fights they barely won, of lessons that stuck like scars, of what it meant to lead. Kovu, once groomed by Scar, had found strength in love. Kion, once gifted with the roar, had found wisdom in surrender. They could have been bitter enemies, but instead, they became brothers. Their bond wasn't forged in blood, but in understanding and respect and shared purpose. And together, they were building a future where the past wouldn't repeat itself. Years later, animals in both kingdoms still whispered Kion's name, not as a warrior, not as a prince, but as a symbol. He had shown that something powerful, something no roar could ever teach. That greatness, it's not measured in battles won, but in peace, chosen, in power given away, and love shared quietly over time. His legacy wasn't carved into rock, it was carved into hearts. In the way that Ronnie ruled with grace, in the way that Vitani led with strength, in the way that Kovu and Kiara raised their pride, and in every cub who believed they could be more than what the world expected them to be. Many lions believed the roar of the elders was a gift of destruction, a way to strike down enemies, to prove dominance. But Kion learned a truth that nobody else had ever uncovered. The roar was never meant to rule others. It was meant to shape the one who carried it. And once that lesson was learned, the roar didn't need to stay. He gave it up, not because he was weak, but because he was finally strong enough to lead without it. And that decision changed everything. So when we talk about Kion, we don't just remember the battles he fought or the power that he held. We remember his choice to let go of the roar, to lead with grace, to step aside so that others could rise. This was his quiet revolution, his gentle rebellion against the idea that strength must always shout. Because Kion proved that sometimes the strongest roar, it's no roar at all. and that's what made him truly unforgettable. What lesson do you think the roar was really meant to teach? Drop your thoughts in the comments section down below. And if you liked our video today, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tap that notification bell for more Lion King content. And until next time, Hakuna Matata.